Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Square Table organized by ISACA with support of Norea. Welcome to our table. It says welcome to the round table, but it's a square table tonight. And tonight we have two very special speakers and a very interesting topic, a topic that for me personally feels very close to what I do, risk management in a business language. Not every business senior manager understands the language of risk, cybersecurity, or IT. And unfortunately, a lot of people in risk, IT, and cybersecurity, and especially the last two groups, do not understand business or the business language. That's why tonight is very valuable. My name is Arash Rahmani. I'm a board member of ISACA Netherlands, and I will be your host tonight. And I will give the mic to our speakers for tonight. But before I do that, a few rules, a few general rules. So please put your mic on mute, and please do not share your video unless you are one of the speakers. It's very important that everyone who is not a speaker, please turn off their video. Number two, if you are joining and you are a member and you want your CPE points, please ensure two things. One is that your full official name is in Microsoft Teams. So if it's just your first name or just your last name or some other name, that is not you. We cannot find you in the list and we will not be able to give you a CPE point. And another is that we are only allowed to give CPE points for people who have been participating for at least 50 minutes of the presentation. So if you leave early for whatever reason, be aware that you will not get your CPE points. The presentation will be recorded and slides will be shared a while after the presentation with everyone who has joined. If you have any questions, please type it in the chat or raise your hand. And since we have right now 263 participants, please fill it in the chat box. It's much more clear that way. And then the speakers will be able to answer your questions. And we will try within the presentation, there are a few cases presented, and with each case, we will collect a few questions and redirect them to the speakers. And I would like to give the mic to our speakers, Vincent and Gilbert.
Hey there, good to be able to join this today. We will first start with a short introduction. So I will go first and then Gilbert will follow me up. I'm Vincent van Dijk. I'm living in Denmark and I have my own company, Security Scientist. On the website with the same name, I always also publish some security related articles with about 5,000-ish readers a month now. I publish articles for ISACA, for a platform for informatiebeveiliging. And one of my expertise, which I also presented last time, was cybersecurity for small to medium sized companies, and for those I actually created a method out of scientific research. And that's in short, real short, what I'm doing. And now I hand over the mic to Gilbert.
Yeah, let's put the mic on. Okay, Gilbert van Zijl. I have a master in informatics, but also in biology. And after some years working for United Nations and large hospitals, I started 11 years ago with my own company. I'm now solely helping as a part-time security and privacy officer, small, medium enterprises. And last year, 10-year jubileum for my company, I decided to publish some experience. And I did that together with Vincent in Risk Model Canvas, and that's also the framework we will use today to discussing our cases. I'm happy to see you all, 270 even, and I have a special hello for the people from Canada listening in as well. Okay, let's start.
So what we will do today is we should first start with an opening about us, but we already kind of did that. So we move right into the risk model canvas. That will be the method we will be using today to make that connection with the business. Then we will use some case studies. We do as much case studies as we can do. We prepared around 5, but we're gonna do as much as we can fill in the time. These are actual case studies from the experience of Gilbert. And lastly, we will do some discussion and feedback. But we first start with the risk model canvas. And before we actually even start with that, I want to start off with a quote that Gilbert found very recently on the Ithaka platform. And yeah, what he, in this quote, what he said is like, to communicate to senior management, you need to know the business model, strategic business plans and objectives. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. So how can we align ourselves with the business model, strategic plans, and how can we communicate in the same way? And basically, this is our values. So what we believe here, in order to generate value of cybersecurity, we want to have a business aligned to risk and a risk aligned to controls. And the degree of alignment we have, that's the amount of value we're going to generate. And we want to do that today with the risk model canvas. Now, if you go to riskmodelcanvas.net, you can even find some more information about it. But what this is a strategic level risk management tool. We have been using this a lot for small companies, but it also works for the big companies. It's really a nice way of working with risk. And why would you want to use this? Now, first of all, you want to get management ownership. So you want to speak the same language as management in order to get their involvement and their ownership. In this way, we can also capture the gut feeling of management, because very often the senior management already knows what's going on. They have a certain feeling, but they cannot really express it. And this way they can express it. Then it's a one-pager. So you can have your whole business and risk aligned in one page and discuss it. So it's very nice for discussions. It's a framework. So instead of, when you're doing risks, that you have issues like, when am I complete? How much should I do? You can follow this framework. So as soon as you fill that framework, you have a pretty decent coverage of the high level strategic risk. And yeah, also very important is it's combined with ISO. It has been used for the ISO in risk management. So if you ever have an auditor, you can comply with it. It's not some weird thing you have to do on the side. Now, the way this works is, for anyone familiar with the business model canvas, they know that this will sound very familiar, because what the risk model canvas basically is a risk plotted on the business model canvas. So before we go into the risk model canvas a little bit deeper, we first go into what is actually the business model canvas. And this is already what it says, a business model. So this is really the language of business. And the business model canvas is created in a one-pager in a few different components. So what we have here is we have the key value of the business that the business is generating. We see the key activities. What is it doing to generate that value? Which partners do they use? How do they relate to the customer? What segments? What kind of customers are they serving? What is the channels they're using? Are they using the website? Are they using sales channels? What is the cost structure? So where are most costs are being made, and where are the revenue streams? To dive into this a little bit deeper, we took an example of Google. And if we take Google, we will find that what they deliver is ultra-fast browser experience. That's their value. And on the side, they also have value towards website owners, because apart from us searching on Google and we getting value from our search, and they also help business owners and website owners to be found on the internet. So they have a multitude of customers they're serving with certain value. Now, how do they do that? They have a platform. You can self-serve on that. It's self-service. That's the customer channels. Then they have the channels. How are they serving the people? What's the technical? So they have the website, They have the AdSense platform, they have a mobile app, desktop app, whole range of channels. Who are they serving? And not only us as users, but also advertisers who wants to get traffic to their website, maybe sell something. They have content publishers who want to get traffic also because they want to share what they're doing. Let's say take the Iyasaka platform or the Iyasaka website. Those people when they search on Google, Iyasaka wants to be found on their articles. Then we have the key activities. So what are they doing? So they're doing infrastructure. They're acquiring companies to do development, product expansion. Then lastly, what they also do is they have resources. So one of the most important resources is the brand colors, the way they can see it. Like the way if you see Google, we instantly recognize it. They also have the products and services, which are key resource. They have the infrastructure. And then lastly, we have the partners. So who are they partnering up with? They have a whole network, whole platform. So they partner up with developers, with the users, with content creators, all through their platform. And all this together is their business model. They generate value with the value proposition. They use all these other components to serve that customer, but they also want to make some money. So they have a revenue stream, and the way they make their money is by advertising on YouTube, on Google, but on the same side, all of this costs money. So they spend a lot in research and development. They have data centers. They have product expansion. So that's the way they're basically costing money. And if you're looking at cybersecurity specifically, if the cybersecurity costs are too much in comparison, then it might not make a lot of sense for the company to invest too much in cybersecurity. So you really want to stay within that cost structure. This is the business model compass. So we know the way Google does its business. Now, for your own company, this can be completely different customers, different value, different channels, etc. But what's most important here, if we go to risk, is what happens if we do business model canvas plus risk. So we have the language of the business and we're adding the risk factor. Then what we're getting is the risk model canvas. And that is the method we're going to be discussing, because in this way you can communicate with senior management and talk about risks that they actually care about, because these are the risks of their business. And we do that in 3 steps. So first, you describe the business. That's what we do with the business model canvas. Then we prepare risk definitions. And lastly, we are going to analyze the high-level risk and talk with management, have the conversation with them. And that's where we start communicating with them on a level of risk. But for us, it's really important, very nice that we're talking about risk in this scenario and we're talking about the business model, but how is security exactly going to play a role in this? And how can we communicate and link to that business model? For that, we have 5 cases. And we start off with the first case. That will be about the quality of risk of an IT service provider. Gilbert will do a short introduction. And from there, what I will do is I will start asking some questions to Gilbert and explain, how did his conversation with management go? What did he feel? And how did he generate that alignment, that value of cybersecurity? So Gilbert, here we have the case, a business model, a risk model canvas even. Can you explain this?
Yes, I will take over. We have a SaaS company as an example first case, and SaaS companies, of course, delivering, making software and putting that over internet, getting that to the market. The value proposition is software as a service. That can be as white label, or they can have their own label. It's not very difficult to think about the key activities. That will be development, software, product delivery, mostly is that system management, network management, customer support, help desk, and sales and marketing is very important. The resources, developers, designers, their intellectual property, code base, and of course, if they have data from customers, and production data is very important. Key partners, operational IT infrastructure, knowledge maybe, and customer segments can be quite a lot depending on the value proposition. Most cost structures, 70% human resource related and 30% on other costs, housing, IT, and whatever. The revenue streams can be different, but we will come later on that. Now, I've implemented ISO 27001 in several SaaS companies, and in most of them I had the same type of discussion. I will show you. And the thing was like, okay, management, what's your gut feeling? What is the problem when we're looking to this business model? And how they say operations is having difficulties in managing. What are they managing? What is the problem? Well, there's especially after a new release, they really have problems in having all their tasks. A new release. Yeah. So after a short discussion, it appeared that after a new release, there were several additional releases for patching up bugs and other problems. So after some discussion, we came that product development, quality of code, was in a way the problem. And of course, within these issues, there is also security issues in a way. If functionality is not there, then availability is the issue. Could also be an integrity of data issue, of course. And confidentiality is also quite often in support problems and issues. So, but it is not really a problem to make or necessary to make this detailed zooming in on what is it indeed an information risk, because it's a business risk, and within them there are quite some information risks. So they are relevant for us.
So Gilbert, so to sum it up a little bit, we have a software provider here. This was one of your customers, let's say, and one of their gut feelings of management was like that. The software quality was not really up to par, and that caused some bugs and maybe some security issues. How did you make the link to security? What did you use to tackle this risk?
Well, it's in a way in statistics. Look in any support database, and you see quite a lot of problems, and of course they have to be solved. If you really look, then some data are not correct and has to be so that's an integrity problem. And as you all know, it's the CIA, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability that matter as themes for information security. Availability, if a functionality is not there, then users will complain. I say, I like to do this, but the functionality is not available to me. Or maybe the whole application is not available. Then it's a serious issue, of course. But over these bugs, and you really look into the bugs, then it's mostly just things to be solved. But you can link them to one of these three themes. So most of support questions are immediately to be linked to information security, and a lot of small ones make a big one altogether. So if it's regular based, a lot of small ones, then you have a big one. But also is this you have this pyramid from experience with for example for safety, that 10,000 small ones, then you have 100 bigger ones and maybe 20 very serious problems. And that's just how it is. So you want to stay away at the top of the pyramid and lower all over problems.
And so what you're telling me, if I sum it up a little bit, it's like, although it's not a complete cybersecurity risk, right? Because we're talking quality of code and we have something to do with quality. Security is very related, because let's say we have a vulnerability management solution to be very, really go into the security industry. Like we use vulnerability management. We can find vulnerabilities, but then directly attached to the same risk of quality of code, because if the code quality is good and we maintain it good, we should have less vulnerability. So you can use security measures as a way to really dive down what management thinks is really a business risk, right? And it might not be all security related, but it's a really big part. And you mentioned some ISO. Are there some really specific ISO measures that are really relevant to this risk?
Well, yeah, I think so. You could look at, for example, Annex 825, Secure Development Lifecycle. I mean, if the quality is good, if the secure development lifecycle is good, then probably the development lifecycle is good. I mean, for me, it's the same.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen no development company that is separating the secure development lifecycle from just the normal software development lifecycle. So they are the same. And of course, that there you see that's in a way it's the same. The same secure system architecture will help, and of course, good testing and aligning, for example, support with development and with delivery.
And so I really like, because you make the connection to from the business model, and they're developing code and whatever is important in the development of the code, and basically, like also scaling the business, right? So if your code quality is not up to par, you most likely going to have some issues maybe on your cost structure because you're making too much cost, or you cannot scale enough because you don't have a very scalable product. I really like this view on that. I think it's good to see a little few different perspectives. So let's look at another case. But before we do that, does anyone have any questions?
If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Any questions? I have a question, actually. I was wondering, how is this model received by management? I mean, from your experience, how does management look to your risk model canvas?
Right, in my experience, and I've been using this risk of business model canvas even before I started my own company. They recognize it, they like it, and one of the things they like is that it's one A4, and so and they recognize it, so it's their language. So it's received very, very well.
Yeah, maybe to add, actually, from my experience, what I noticed, especially when I'm working as a consultant, is, and I have a lot of different clients, I noticed that, first of all, you want to understand the company, so you want to know what their business is. And very often, if I ask the question first on the business model canvas, because the risk model canvas they don't know, management actually already has a business model canvas, or they're using it for new marketing ventures or setting up new companies. So it's the business models canvas is already very recognized. They just don't use it for risk, and that's the difference.
And I use it not only for risk. I start ISO terminology to use it for describing business context. So this is my business context, and then we discuss risk over the business context.
Yeah, interesting.
And also external auditors, well, 10 years ago, they had some questions, but at this moment, it's received very well.
Interesting, yeah. And well, there are no additional questions from the chat as far as I can see. And
I see one popping up, but maybe...
You see one coming up?
Yeah, I want
How do you capture a risk response from Peter Stefan?
Yeah.
Well, that's in the old-fashioned way. In way, we put a circle on it, and then we go to the Excel matrix and say, okay, this is our risk, and what is the impact? Now, I could, for example, take this one and say, okay, we give it a high risk rating, and I come to that why it will be high. Impact would be, for most of the problems around development, the quality problems would be small, but the frequency is high, and that makes it high. And also, with all this rework, strategic goals of the management are difficult to reach, and mostly strategic development goals they have for the SaaS application, and that makes it the high risk, because it's hindering a strategic target of the company, and that makes that immediately also makes it that management is very much involved to solve this.
As also say, if we add to that, is I think you can use a lot of your traditional tools to manage risks. The biggest different one is that this is a like a tool you can use to capture risk and or to translate it. So it's like a tool you can use on top. And I think in most cases, management is not really that interested in what you use, if you use Excel or a platform or how you do that. It's more about the high level risk and how can we communicate. So this is really very much a translation tool.
Yeah, that's right. Good interpretation.
I think we're ready for case 2. I don't see any other questions. Do you see any other questions? Let's go. So case 2, we go into the healthcare now. Use of AHR. Very
the electronic health record.
You can say it way better than I do. Like you see, I'm not coming from the healthcare.
No. But before I started my own company, I worked in big hospitals here in the south of the Netherlands. So I have a lot of healthcare people and companies in my network. Of course, value proposition, delivering health to patients and care to patients, and organize integrated care. Activities are then also delivering of care, organizing of care, financial administration, which is quite important as well. And education part is for all healthcare organizations also important one. Now, one of the key resources is their electronic health record, or in Dutch, elektronisch patiëntendossier. So it's there, the records of every patient, and it's mostly in an information system at this moment. Also the personnel, the employees who are very important, and at this moment we are in a labor market that personnel, employees, also for healthcare, are not enough. There are a shortage there. And knowledge and organization is, of course, very, very important. Now, because there's shortage in employees, management is starting to think about how can we be more efficient. And in most healthcare organizations, I see a strategic direction like, okay, we are going to digitize. We are going to use information systems for smarter work, for patient planning, for work planning, for to put automatic monitoring on patients and give an alarm if necessary, so that we don't forget it. There's a lot of things that in very complex data of patients that a computer can do, where people need a lot of time. I mean, from my radiotherapy past, I know that they make a diagnosis on more than 80 variables. And they need a computer interpretation to do that in a short time and in a good way, because 80 is too much to process yourself as a human. Yeah? So that's what they are going to do. And then you see that a lot of these healthcare organizations also have problems in getting this strategic direction implemented. Somewhere it's not working. They don't get the gain they hope to get. They don't get the production and efficiency gain they hoped for. And this is the case why. And one of the things is that employees working in healthcare are very much human oriented, care oriented, and often not so good in technology, or it's just not in their interest. That means also that filling in data and recording in an information system is not always done as we technologists and software people would like. One of the examples I've seen records that they have special fields for blood pressure. The high pressure and the low pressure, that's the two values they always record. And when I was looking into this health records, I saw a lot of values missing, but they were on the open text field in the electronic health record. Like, okay, the blood pressure is like, and of course, if you're doing it like that, it's nicely recorded. It's in the patient dossier, in the records. But your alarm that maybe pressure is getting a trend to be too high, and medicines are not really working on that, and maybe need a re-evaluation, are missed because they are not in special fields. So it's like that. And this is why we discussed then with management, like, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to look at this? And then a lot of non-IT or not technical measures are needed.
So very interesting, because if I sum it up, like you have management that goes into a strategic direction. That's the language they want to speak, because they're looking at the people, they're looking at the business model, they see a clear problem. They want to solve it with some kind of direction. They use a tool, but instead of being, let's say called hacked by a hacker from outside that's messing with the database through which they cannot reach the goals, because like a hacker could manipulate the database and manipulate the health records. Instead of that, we have an integrity issue, but it's caused on a completely different level, because it's caused by personnel not filling in the correct fields on the correct places, or forgetting to fill it in. So you kind of have the same issue of integrity, but a different cause. What is your thoughts on what kind of measures are you using? Maybe even a direct link to the ISO. What would you use to solve this?
The solution would be, one of the things would be working on competence of employees, which is in high level structure 7.2, but also in monitoring and measurement. I mean, it's mostly that the care departments are working on how to work with it. But I've seen quite a lot of care organizations where employees are allowed to work with a health record without a good training. Like in other companies, a lot of people have to work with Microsoft and without any training, because it's supposed to be intuitive, but it's not. And of course, we could add up to that. I mean, if you really have problems with with certain things that are not filled in, and so that your alarming is not growing, or your monitoring, patient monitoring is not working out. Or we could of course monitor because we have the logs, the loggings of the information system, and you couldn't see how employees are using it. So that's monitoring, logging, and in a way it's also incident and problem management to see where the problems is. And I can tell you that after a discussion like this, you get much more interesting awareness program for employees than normally. I mean, what is normally an awareness program? That's a monthly phishing test. Now we can make it like, okay, we have focused this month on blood pressure and how to fill it in, and what is the aim of it, and how is the electronic health record helping with monitoring patients then for that, and how is the doctor reacting on his monitoring signals. And you can explain that, and people will use it much more properly then. And next month is the next topic, like, okay, allergies, they are important. And I see also why is key resources here highlighted. I highlighted here patient records because that's where the risk is, together with personnel and the knowledge of them.
Yeah, somebody took control, but an important thing to note is like it's our case, so we focus specific on a risk. Normally what you do is you take the whole canvas and figure out, what's the risks on the whole canvas, and then you distill which down is the highest. But what we do in each case is really focus on a specific risk. In this case, it's the key resources, which has the risk of integrity risk on the records. But coming back to your story, what I found really interesting is you mentioned you're using monitoring tools or awareness tools to kind of cover this business risk. Now you can also report to management on that level, right? So is our risk increasing or decreasing? Because you can kind of see it based on how well your employees are doing the training, or what monitoring indicates back. What's your experience with this kind of reporting to management? How does it work with their involvement?
That's mostly difficult and has a lot to do with that they don't know good about what to expect. It's like healthcare is working. The way of working, their motto is in a way at this time is evidence-based medicine. So if you say, okay, somebody is ill, I have a diagnosis, then it should be evident, it should be proven with data, and also medicines that you are using then and or treatment is proven to be helpful with medical research. But they are mostly not so much on evidence-based management. They just don't have the experience with it, and that's an interesting, because if we make this comparison, they say, oh, so we are going to look if we are going to do better. Yes, and of course it's a search like, okay, what is, like always, what is your good key performance indicator for improving here?
Very interesting one. Very interesting one. I think it's time for our next case, but so it's time for questions. Do we see any questions?
Not yet, but I would ask, we have 285 people. If you have any questions, please ask them now. Put them in the chat.
Yeah. What Vincent said, we just picked out one risk that we have seen and have experienced, but mostly it's like with higher management, I have between 10 and 20 high-level risks. So you could say there are 10 to 20 of these circles on the business canvas, and we work that out.
I see a comment popping up. I don't know if you see it, but I see it. So we have here somebody that asked a little long question, so I won't read it out completely. But what he's basically saying is like there are some risks I cannot just not plot on that he cannot plot on this canvas. Take for example a ransomware risk. How could you plot this on the canvas? I mean, I see actually how you would translate the ransomware risk on this canvas, but I want to hear your thoughts on Gilbert on a ransomware risk. Where would you plot these more technical orientated risks?
Well, often you see that it comes like, okay, it could be also in the key resource. Okay, I have my patient records and I really have to protect them because they are ransomware. You could also say, okay, I'm very afraid that my key activities cannot be done anymore because of a ransomware attack. This is, I mean, to be honest, mostly higher management is not really worried about the ransomware attack, but because the business is broken at that moment. They can't perform their key activities and they can't deliver the value proposition.
Yeah, so basically what you're saying, right, is like you should frame your thinking a little bit different. Instead of placing a ransomware risk just on there, you need to think from a business perspective. Why do I care about ransomware? And what Gilbert says is the main reason I care, for example, about ransomware is because if that happens, I cannot perform my key activities anymore. So there's a risk on the key activities or maybe on the key resources. But there could be other risks related that could also stop your key activities, right? So ransomware could be one of them, but a strike could be another one. So you need to link it back to the business in order to make the conversation business-like. And that's how you translate. That's why I call it a translating tool.
Yes,
and that's how they can understand it.
Yeah, and it's true. I mean, I was very close by one of the more famous Dutch ransomware attacks. Is on the University of Maastricht in 2020 or Christmas 2019 it was. And as my wife is working on this university, and I've been working there, so I have a lot of ex-colleagues. I know that their key activities, which is academic training of students, was disturbed for over 6 months. And for about 3 weeks, there was just nothing going, nothing. So yeah. That's the impact, and that's what, in a way, is the real risk. I mean, and of course, you translate that to an operational risk or to a tactical risk, like, okay, then we should avoid a ransomware, and we should look at factors. But if you have these high-level risks, then as a security officer or a security team, it's not very difficult to know where the focus is.
We have another question.
Question,
by the way. Sorry to interrupt you. We have another question, which is, what about the convergence between IT and OT? And for me, the question is not clear. I don't know if it's quite clear for you, but otherwise, Joost, could you please clarify it? And if it is clear for you, then could you please answer it?
No, I would like a clarification.
Yeah, give Joost some time. In the meantime, I see another question. I think your chat is a little bit delayed, because that question came earlier.
My chat is indeed delayed. Somehow I hear you, and then like a minute later, I see the questions.
Yeah, that's okay. But we see one here, and it says, do you make use of some kind of threat list to plot on the canvas? I think it also translates a little bit. Can you have a threat list and then plotting it back to the canvas? Do you ever do that? Or can you do that? Maybe that's a question. Let's say you have already an existing threat list. You already have a list of risks, maybe threats. What do you do with it? Can you plot them back on the canvas?
You could see threats and how they impact, of course, for example, your key activities, or are they threatening partners or resources, and or things like that, or your value proposition. That can mean also that you can get again your management involvement. Like, okay, the threat of ransomware is an immediate threat to our proposition and key activities, and then that's a different thing. Like, okay, we have a threat of ransomware, we should be careful. I mean, that's probably they don't translate it to their own part. So yes, you can do that, and in a way, I'm doing that quickly in my head, discussing this also with higher management. But in the end, I always stay with their language, and we translate it later to technical part.
Yeah, again, it's a translating tool, and I think you should definitely not throw out your original tools. Use them, but translate them again on the canvas to speak that big business language. We have a next case. I will see. I think we can do one or maybe two more cases, but I think one. Let's see.
I think one.
I think so too. The next case, availability and integrity on we're going back to the healthcare system. So I think this again a little bit more focus on the key research, but now on patient records. Can you explain this, Gilbert?
Yeah, so patient records, like integrity risks is integrity risk on your patient records data is in a way also a patient safety risk. If the depending of course on the type of information, but in a way inavailability, incorrect or incomplete health records can lead to mistreatment, and in the most extreme cases to severe health problems or even death. And in that way, it's a bit strange, because we mostly in our field we are discussing whole different type of risks. That's mostly technical risks. But if you can bring that back to patient safety, and okay, it could mean that patients are going to die because information is not correct, then it gives a complete different feeling. So I can, for example, give an example, like, and this is a well-known in healthcare for hospitals. Now, missing what is one of the most important data in a patient health record is allergy for example, for medicines. And one of the allergies which is quite common is an allergy that people build on for antibiotics. Now, that's, if you can discuss that with your doctor, it's not a problem. But the moment that you should have a car accident, and this is a case that just happened, and our inspection for the Dutch healthcare is using this example as well. You have a car accident, and patient is quite messed up. So he or she, the patient, is not unable to talk. And if at that moment in the patient record it's unknown that this patient that is brought in with the ambulance is having an allergy, for example, for this antibiotics, the first treatment they do is give this antibiotics intravenous. So it's going over the drip into your veins. And if you are allergic to that, then it's a certain death. So this, you see that to have this correct and available at the moment that is needed is very important. And so there's not very much of attention to integrity of the data. And also, if you look to the ISO standard, then if you really look to the measures, there's a lot for vulnerability, but there's not a lot of measures that really go into risks that address integrity risks.
I think it's very.
I really have to go for it, and it's like high over, like classification of information, learning from information security incidents, or IT readiness for continuity. But high over, really pinpointing integrity, it's very difficult. Maybe monitoring, logging, but you should also have somebody looking into it. And I'm really looking into data integrity.
I think a good example what I like is if we take security monitoring, which is really one of my specialties actually. What we notice is often we implement security monitoring because you have to when the compliance says you should log and monitor. But it doesn't really specify what you log and monitor. And now what you should do is instead of just logging and monitoring, what if you look specifically to the integrity risk of this specific business risk? So you specifically at the availability of that field on a specific system and what's happening to it. You can make a very clear use case why you want to use monitoring, and you can with the business model canvas you can make like a whole set of business model canvas. You can make a whole set of threats and risks, business risk, which you want to have monitored, and you can translate directly to usual actions that actually make sense to management, because now management can get involved with records, it can get involved with KPIs that make sense, which is not just a security KPI. I see that let me take back the presentation. I think it has been stolen from me. I guess that's also some kind of integrity risk. Maybe in the meantime, we can do some questions. I think Joost answered. Can you read out the answer from Joost? Do you already see it? And I will try to upload the slide again.
Okay. Where is it?
Yeah, there are actually two questions. One is the clarification from Joost, and the other one is that they're a little bit confused between Business Canvas and Risk Canvas, and if you can have a clear difference between them.
No, there's not really a difference, but Business Canvas is made, thought up to for marketing and to prepare new propositions and services to the market. And in a way, I use this model for describing an organization rather than thinking about a future change or a new path for an organization or a new proposition. So, and then we plot and we use it also for discussing risks. So it's looking the same, but what you do with it, that's the difference. That's why we call it a risk model canvas instead of business model canvas. Business model canvas is for business people giving a wrong interpretation.
Yeah, it's really a choice of like, instead of calling it, the business model canvas with some components of risk, with the risk model canvas, what we try to do is really emphasize on the risk part. So it's basically the same thing. It's the business model canvas. The only difference what you do is you integrate your risk component. And as soon as you do that, it's the risk model canvas. But technically it's the same tool. It's just how you use it and the extra step that makes it different.
Yep. Yeah, so I hope that's clear. And then back to Joost. Your remark on increasing reliance on sensors and other operational technology makes me wonder how you handle the increasing convergence of IT systems and OT technology. IT and OT. OT is for operational technology, or?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Do you have a clue, Vincent? Because I think it's quite difficult. I don't grab it immediately.
Now, I think if you look at it, what it says is, if you look from this perspective, it's not really a question of IT or OT. You have a specific risk. And that might involve IT or OT or both at the same time. Most likely because IT and OT are combining more and more together, we are getting an increased risk of their communication with each other, which could have integrity or availability issues. But on the business model itself, you don't really see it because you're afraid of the integrity, let's say, on the patient records. And if you distill that down, you can find specific threats or risks related to, the communication between IT and OT, or the fact that your OT systems are less secure than your IT systems are. So you have a bigger threat there. I think that's kind of answers it a little bit.
Yeah, maybe also another thought on that is that what I see mostly happening is what the ISO standards are also aiming for with their high-level structure is integrated risk management. So you see that the risks that we talk about are not all information risks or information security risks. So mostly I get even a label. I see that, for example, in healthcare organizations, people plot also patient risk, and I have also seen that the environmental risks or ARBO related risks are plotted on the same canvas, and we just label them with the theme that they belong to. In a way, it's risk.
Also,
Type of risk.
Question from Peter here. Oh, sorry. Do you want to?
We are reaching almost 8 o'clock, so I have to keep the question. We're reaching the end of the event, so I have to hold on the questions. If you have additional questions, please reach out to our speakers. I'm sure they will try to help you out. But we only have a few more minutes to go, and we really close at 8 o'clock. So I would like to thank you, both the speakers, for giving us a more in-depth perspective of the risk model canvas. Thank you for that. It's great to see over 280 participants tonight. And for those interested in risk and also interested in DORA, we actually have a physical event coming up on the 25th of April, around 6 o'clock at Van de Valk in Utrecht, and it's going to be an exclusive event for DORA. So if you're interested in DORA, we're going to have 4 speakers on the 25th of April. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks to speakers again, and thanks to people behind the screens who helped organize this. And I wish everyone a great evening. The SharePoint will be shared. Thank you very much.